You want to get smart on a major global event, understand the key players and what's really going on, but, without spending your entire day scrolling through news feeds.
Yeah, who has time for that?
Exactly. So you're in the right place. Today, we're doing a deep dive into India's Operation Sindoor. This was the military response after that really disturbing terror attack in Pahalgam.
A very significant event.
For sure. We've pulled together reports from Al Jazeera, NDTV, and also an article from NewsX to get a rounded picture.
Good sources.
Our mission here, basically to cut through all the noise and give you the essential insights, what happened, the thinking behind the operation, and how the rest of the world is reacting, all without overwhelming you.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's jump in. Initial reports of, pretty significant military action started coming out early Wednesday, May 7th. It was obvious something major had just happened.
Absolutely. And to really get why this operation happened, we have to look back at the tragic event that came just before it. That terror attack in the Bizaran Valley near Pahalgam on April 22nd.
It's just horrific. I mean, 26 people killed, mostly tourists, and there was that really sinister detail. They seemed to be deliberately targeting the men.
Yes, that was a key feature.
And that chilling account, a terrorist reportedly telling a surviving woman, "Go, tell Modi." What does that signify?
Well, that statement, if accurate, it just speaks volumes, doesn't it? It's a direct challenge, a message clearly aimed right at the top of the Indian government.
Right.
And Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri pointed out, these are the most civilian casualties since the 2008 Mumbai attacks. That really highlights the shock, the outrage. It was undeniably the trigger for Operation Sindoor.
Okay, so the attack provided the immediate impetus. How did Operation Sindoor actually play out, militarily speaking?
It was very precisely planned and executed, launched early Wednesday, May 7th, about 1:05 a.m., and it lasted only around 25 minutes.
Wow, 25 minutes.
Yeah, and what's really notable is that it was a joint operation. We're talking Army, Navy, and Air Force working together. They carried out 24 precision missile strikes.
24 strikes in 25 minutes. That suggests, a very high level of coordination and readiness.
Absolutely. Very sophisticated.
Where were these strikes aimed? What were the targets?
The targets were chosen very carefully. 9 locations across Pakistan and also Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, or POK. That's the part Kashmir administered by Pakistan.
Okay.
And these sites weren't random. They were specifically identified because of their direct links to various terrorist groups.
Right. Can you maybe walk us through some of these locations, which groups were associated with them, why hit these specific places?
Sure. Let's take the Sawai Nala camp. That's in Muzaffarabad, about 30 kilometers inside Pakistan proper. It was known as a major training facility for Lashkar-e-Taiba,
Leti, okay.
This group's been implicated in, numerous attacks. And this camp was specifically linked to earlier attacks in Sonmarg, Gulmarg, and crucially, the recent Pahalgam attack.
So hitting that was a direct response to the immediate trigger event.
Exactly. It shows they weren't just lashing out, they were targeting the infrastructure believed to be behind that specific attack.
Makes sense. What about the other 8 locations?
Well, there was the Syedna Bilal camp in POK. That was seen as a key staging area for Jaish-e-Mohammed, JEM.
JEM, another major group.
Right. This camp was used for training in weapons, explosives, even jungle survival, skills needed for operating across the line and controlling Kashmir. Then you had the Gulpur camp in Kotli, also about 30 kilometers from the Last Sea, another Leti base.
Okay.
This one focused on the Rajouri-Poonch area, linked to attacks there. And quite concerningly, reports suggest it was frequently visited by Zakir Rahman Lakhvi.
Lakhvi, the name associated with the 26/11 Mumbai attacks.
The very same. His reported presence links this camp to, that history of high-profile terrorism. It underscores the persistence of these networks.
That's a significant connection. It really highlights the long-term nature of this threat.
It does. Then, closer to the line of control, you had the Barnalas camp in Bimber, just 9 kilometers away. This one focused more on tactical training, weapons handling, making IEDs, jungle survival again.
Practical skills for infiltration, basically.
Pretty much. Kotli Abbas, about 13 kilometers from the Last Sea, was another training facility. Then, moving over to Sialkot, very close to the international border, only 6 kilometers, was the Sarjal camp.
6 kilometers, that's really close.
Extremely close. This camp apparently trained the terrorists responsible for killing 4 Indian soldiers back in March of this year. So, a direct link to very recent violence against security forces.
Okay, so each target seems tied to specific violent acts or preparing for them.
That seems to be the rationale, yes. The Mamuna Joya camp, also in Sialkot, was known as a Hizbul Mujahideen stronghold.
Hizbul Mujahideen, another established group.
Correct. And intelligence suggested the 2016 Pathankot airbase attack was actually planned and directed from this location.
Wow. Okay, so historical significance there too.
Definitely. Then, further inside Pakistan, near Muridke, was Markaz-Taiba. That's a notorious Lit-T training center.
Markaz-Taiba. That name rings a bell.
It should. It's where Ajmal Kasab and David Headley, key figures in the 2008 Mumbai attacks, reportedly received their training.
Right. Kasab and Headley.
And finally, Markaz Subhanallah in Bahawalpur. This one's much deeper inside Pakistan, maybe 100 kilometers in. This served as the headquarters for Jaish-e-Mohammed, their main hub for recruitment, training, indoctrination.
So going through that list, it really paints a picture. This wasn't just symbolic. It was a strategic operation aiming to disrupt, maybe dismantle, key parts of these terror networks.
That appears to be the objective.
What kind of weapons allowed them to hit these targets so precisely, especially the ones deeper inside Pakistan?
They used some pretty advanced stuff. Reports mention Scalp-P cruise missiles. These are air-launched, long-range, very accurate, good for deep strikes.
Okay.
They also used hammer precision bombs. These are designed to take out hardened targets, like bunkers or command centers.
Right, penetrating munitions.
Exactly. And also, loitering munitions were mentioned. You might know them as kamikaze drones. These can hang around over an area, send back video, provide surveillance, and then strike a target very precisely once it's confirmed.
That's a serious arsenal. So what was the official line? What message did India want to send with Operation Sindoor?
The message from the Indian government was, well, pretty blunt, a very firm stance against cross-border terrorism. They used phrases like, no more.
No more. Powerful.
Yes. They called the operation a befitting reply and talked about justice served for the Pahalgam victims. They also made a point of emphasizing that they aimed only at terror infrastructure, specifically trying to avoid civilian casualties. And Prime Minister Modi had publicly vowed, to go after those responsible for the Pahalgam attack. Yeah. This operation looks like the fulfillment of that promise.
And the name itself, Operation Sindoor, that's quite loaded culturally and emotionally, isn't it?
It really is. Sindoor, it's that red vermilion powder married Hindu women traditionally wear. It's a very powerful symbol. It represents marriage, tradition, sacrifice, but also, importantly, female resolve.
So the connection is?
By using that name Sindoor, they're drawing a direct, very poignant line to the women who were tragically widowed in that Pahalgam attack. It adds this deep emotional layer to the military action.
A very deliberate, very symbolic choice. How did people within India react to Operation Sindoor?
The reaction inside India was overwhelmingly supportive. Pretty much unified, actually. You had leaders from across the political spectrum, PM Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, but also key opposition figures like Rahul Gandhi and Mallikarjun Kharge, all publicly backing the operation.
That's quite significant, the cross-party support.
It is. There was widespread praise for the armed forces, and you could feel this palpable sense of national resolve, a feeling that the Pahalgam attack had been avenged.
And for the families of the victims.
For them, reports suggest the news brought a measure of relief, perhaps a sense that some form of justice had been done.
Understandable. What about Pakistan? What was their immediate response?
Well, as you'd probably expect, Pakistan strongly condemned the operation. They vehemently denied the targets were linked to terrorism, and they claimed civilian areas were hit.
Did those claims hold up?
No, largely they didn't. Independent fact-checking and international media reports pretty quickly refuted those claims about civilian areas being the primary targets. Interestingly, the Jemen chief, Masood Azhar, reportedly claimed some of his family members were killed. And in the immediate aftermath, things got tense on the ground. Pakistan reportedly resorted to unprovoked firing across the line of control. Tragically, this caused civilian casualties on the Indian side, and there are even reports of UN assets being targeted.
Targeting UN assets, that's a serious escalation.
That certainly marks a dangerous turn.
Okay, so a tense situation between India and Pakistan. How did the wider international community react?
It was quite varied, really, reflecting different geopolitical interests. China, for instance, called for restraint from both sides and described India's operation as regrettable. Pretty standard diplomatic language in these situations.
Cautious. Yeah.
The United States had a bit more nuance. They acknowledged India's right to defend itself against terrorism. Congressman Rich McCormick specifically made that point.
Right.
But they also urged caution, reminding everyone that both countries are nuclear powers. And interestingly, former President Trump offered to mediate again.
That's become something of a pattern.
It has. The U.S. State Department also issued a travel advisory for Pakistan, signaling their concern about the security situation there.
So the U.S. was sort of balancing acknowledging India's justification with concerns about wider stability.
Exactly. The U.K. condemned the original Pahalgam attack, recognized India's right to self-defense, but also called for de-escalation. You heard similar messages from PM Rishi Sunak and MP Priti Patel. Sweden issued a travel warning for Pakistan, much like the U.S. Russia expressed deep concern and also urged restraint. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, called for maximum military restraint. Again, standard UN playbook.
Makes sense. Anyone else?
Yes. Even the Taliban in Afghanistan warned against further escalation, showing how these things can ripple out regionally. Japan issued a statement about the Kashmir situation, and then, in quite a contrast, Israel actually hailed Operation Sindoor, stating firmly that the world shouldn't tolerate terror activities. That likely reflects their own experiences, of course.
Right. So a real spectrum of responses, definitely influenced by each country's own position and relationships in the region.
Absolutely.
Beyond the strikes themselves and the diplomacy, what about security within India? What measures were put in place?
Security was ramped up significantly across India, very much as a precaution. They ran civil defense mock drills, codenamed Operation Abhyas, in several states.
Like air raid drills.
Yes, simulating air raids, practicing blackouts. This happened in Rajasthan, Punjab, Haryana, Gujarat, Karnataka, even Delhi. And actual blackouts were imposed in some border areas, like Jaisalmer and Amritsar.
Taking it seriously.
Very much so. The entire Rajasthan border with Pakistan was sealed. Police leaves were canceled in Punjab to have all hands on deck. And a big one for travelers. 27 airports were closed for commercial flights. Initially just until noon on May 7th, but that got extended to May 10th.
27 airports. That must have caused massive disruption.
Huge disruption. Major airlines, Air India Express, Indigo, SpiceJet, had to cancel numerous flights to and from those regions. Schools and colleges and border districts of Jammu were also closed temporarily.
Okay. What else?
There was increased vigilance against anti-national propaganda on social media. Control rooms were set up in Jammu to monitor everything. And the National Investigation Agency, the NIA, put out public appeals for any information about the Pahalgam attack itself, showing the investigation was still very active.
It sounds like a really comprehensive security clampdown covering immediate threats and also preparedness.
It does.
Now, just to give listeners some context, this kind of military clash between India and Pakistan, it's not exactly new, is it?
Unfortunately, no, not at all. The history between the two countries is, well, fraught with conflict and tension. The reports often allude to this history, the wars in 1947, 1965, 1971, the Kargil War in 99.
Right.
And more recently, you had the incidents after the Uri attack in 2016 and the Pulwama attack in 2019. So Operation Sindoor really needs to be seen within this long, complex, and often volatile history of conflict and accusations of cross-border terrorism.
It's a crucial backdrop. And finally, those airspace restrictions we mentioned, closing 27 airports is one thing, but the wider impact on flights must have been significant too.
Oh, absolutely. Closing large chunks of airspace disrupts everything for airlines flying in or even near South Asia. Many flights had to take much longer routes, detours, to avoid the restricted zones.
Which means more fuel, more time.
Yep.
Exactly. Increased fuel costs, plus airlines often have to pay extra fees, overflying fees, to the countries whose airspace they are now using instead. It adds a big logistical and financial headache for the aviation industry.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. Operation Sindoor was fundamentally a swift, forceful Indian response to that horrific terror attack in Pahalgam.
Correct.
It involved precision strikes targeting what India identified as a network of terror infrastructure across the border in Pakistan and POK.
Using advanced weaponry, yes.
It drew a really diverse range of reactions internationally, from understanding to condemnation to calls for restraint.
A real mix.
And it triggered a major security response within India itself, affecting daily life and travel quite significantly. Hopefully this deep dive has given you, our listener, a clearer picture of the key events and the complex factors involved. Indeed. And, this whole event leaves us with some really important questions to think about. Given that long history of conflict we just touched on and the current climate, what are the long-term consequences? How might operations like this affect regional stability? And how will counterterrorism strategies evolve?
Big questions.
And also, what role can international diplomacy realistically play in cooling things down?
Right.
in preventing future escalations. It's definitely a multi-layered issue with major implications, something that will continue to develop. We really encourage you to keep considering these complexities as you follow what happens next.